Every Monday from 8 a.m, we are joined by Cameron Smith from our Gold Coast studio. As I said in my piece to camera for Fox League on Saturday up at the Sunshine Coast Stadium, maybe Ben Hunt had a point when he said the weather is nicer in Queensland. Seriously, winter in Queensland, picnic rug out on the hill at the Sunshine Coast, watching a game of footy was about...
Big crowd too.
Oh, full house, yeah, full house. Cameron Smith, good morning. Your weather is nicer, isn't it?
Yeah, it is slightly. Vossy Brandy, good morning.
Morning,
We've had to pull the jumpers out over the last few days. They've been quite chilly in the morning, but certainly during the day, Vossy, and in the afternoon, lovely 23, 24 degrees in the middle of winter.
Wow.
Yeah, when we were up in Brisbane last week, I remember we went for a walk early, like about I think 7 o'clock. Shorts, t-shirt, because it was
nice.
and the doorman, the guy working at the hotel, he said, like, he was dressed rugged up. He said, "This is cold weather for us."
Cameron, I thought you'd slip in sun reflecting off the State of Origin shield, or it's our first time we've spoken.
Hang on,
Yeah.
Well, we said in here, Cam, we said, what will we talk about first? And Ben, our producer, said, well, we haven't spoken to Cameron about State of Origin yet. And I said, that was a week ago, wasn't it? Like, anyway.
Move on.
Almost.
Well, if so, I'll be outside the studio. Let me know when you're finished chatting with Cameron about State of Origin.
Well, Cameron, I'll ask the question, because Brandy, since Origin, he came back on air on Friday. He comes with notepad and pen, listeners offering plenty of suggestions. Cameron, I'm going to throw at you, rather than wax lyrical about Queensland and how good their performance has been.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for New South Wales? What would you do in this situation going into Game 3 of this series? Are you making changes because you think, well, we've reached a crossroad, we've lost back-to-back series, got to start looking new players, or do you give them this game to try and at least achieve the 2-1 result? What would you be doing for Game 3 if you're New South Wales?
Well, there's going to be some forced changes, right? New South Wales is going to have to pick a centre in that position where Tom Trbojevic was. I don't think, there's been a lot of chat about Cookie, and Cookie went out there and done his absolute best in that position. But they're going to have to find a centre, whether they make a couple of other changes around maybe their rotation, whether it's a couple of guys that were on the bench, maybe they start, whether they're sort of line-up changes with that transition. But I think... a lot of the talk has been around, well, Damien Cook shouldn't have gone to centre, and, we had this call go against us and all that sort of stuff. But I'll tell you what, like New South Wales, I thought were very brave. They had plenty of opportunities where it was almost a last pass that went wrong, cost them, from those opportunities converting into points. And you've got to put it down to, the work that the Queensland side put in, particularly on their goal line in the first half. Like, their defence was outstanding. I think that's where that's been lost a little bit, where a lot of the focus has been on, well, positional issues and injuries with New South Wales, and, they didn't play well and all this sort of stuff. I thought they actually played okay. If the Queensland side didn't perform the way they did, particularly with a couple of the big plays, like the Cherry Evans chase of Stephen Crichton, a couple of the huge moments that Lindsay Collins come up with, maybe we're talking about a different result here, and we're going to Sydney for a decider. So there wasn't a whole lot in it. And I heard Freddie make the comment about, the scoreline, that really blew out sort of in the end. And he didn't believe the sides were that far apart. I tend to agree with him. So,
all right.
There's going to be some forced changes, Vossy. Put it that way. There's going to be some forced changes.
But we're not talking like 6 or 7, view towards next year and all that sort of thing.
No.
That is the advice of the GOAT. Brandy, you got all that written there?
I'm looking at rookies and how the Australians went in the golf.
Right. He switched off. He switched off for those 2 minutes, Vossy.
Yeah, burning issue, Cameron, is the Ben Hunt story, because it is huge. It is huge. And just this whole premise that I think stinks, that you can have Team 1, and they were before the weekend's results, take best player and captain out of bottom team on the table in an attempt to win the competition, in the last 7 weeks. How does just that premise sit with you, that there is a loophole that allows that to happen? Are you fine with that?
Well, it doesn't look great, does it? It doesn't look great. It probably isn't great. It's a similar but not the same situation as a Pangai Junior when he left the Broncos and went to Penrith. He's a quality forward. He's a State of Origin player. Of course, he played in Origin 1 this year, where he left the Broncos. I know he was out of contract at the end of that year, but he went and joined the Penrith Panthers and bolstered their forward pack. So if they would have tried to buy him at the start of the year, they wouldn't have been able to afford him. So it's a similar, not the same. I'm not saying it's the exact same. It's a similar situation where they were bolstered. They went on to win the premiership. Tavita Pangai Jr. would have been a part of that side if he didn't injure himself before that grand final. He would have been in that team because he was playing great football leading up and into the final series. But I agree with you, Vossy. It's turned into a situation now where it's very ugly down there. And you only have to look at their performance. Now, I'm not saying they performed the way they did against the Warriors because of the Ben Hunt situation, but it's not looking great at all, and something needs to change. Look, if he's to go to the Broncos, unfortunately, where the rules are at the moment with this transfer system and all this other stuff, it actually allows Ben Hunt to do that. It allows the Broncos to do that. If they compensate the Dragons sufficiently with funds, whether it's financial or with a transfer of a player / players, the actual rules allow them to do that. So maybe if this does happen, maybe the NRL need to sit down and start planning ways where this can't happen. This can't happen where a player, particularly of the capabilities of a Ben Hunt, to leave a team sitting on the bottom of the ladder to then go and join a team that's sitting at the top and possibly make them even stronger.
Well, the league step in and do things when they realise that there is something happening that they don't like, even to the point of changing rules.
Yes.
Without they can step in. The league could step in and say, well, you know what? We don't like this. Ben Hunt's still got 2 years. It's not as if he's a player that's out of contract at the end of the year and his club are happy to see him go because they really don't want him anyway, which is sort of Tavita Pangai grounds. Brisbane had brushed him. He signed with the Dogs and joined Penrith in the in-between times. And I agree with you. But the game allows it all to happen now. Like the game, and I said, don't blame Ben Hunt, don't blame the Dragons, don't blame the Broncos.
Yeah, it's the rules.
If it's there to be exploited, well, you can't blame someone. You can't get dirty with someone if the rules are there to be exploited. So
the underarm rule existed though in cricket, and you didn't necessarily have to apply it. Like Ben Hunt,
I
know I'm going extreme, but Ben Hunt owns his own integrity. He's the captain of the Dragons. He is effectively today could be walking out on the club for no good reason.
There is a good reason.
He doesn't have to go back to Queensland now.
No, there is
it's
a good
not family pressure. He has to go right this second.
But he was now when I say you can't blame the Dragons, he was offered an excuse by what the Dragons and how they handled the Anthony Griffin situation. Now and that's the truth too. They offered him. They gave him a little way out of, he said, well, I'm not happy with
Pretty
what's going
naive
on.
if he didn't realise Griffin was under pressure when he signed his extension of his contract. I mean, he signed for the big money at the end of last year, knowing Anthony Griffin's under pressure.
Whatever moral reason, whatever you aren't happy with what Ben Hunt, that's up to him to make that decision. If he can live with it, well, that's tough eggs for eggs for everyone else.
And Vossy, that's the stuff, and that the Griffin sacking and Ben Hunt, being unhappy with that. That's the stuff that's been reported on. We've all aware of that. There may be some things going on in the background that we aren't aware of as well. So you got to take that into account. And also too, and this might be this might be a former player sticking up for a current player, but you see these things happen with clubs. Like if they're not happy with a player and they can offload them if they get an opportunity to offload a player with multiple years on their contract. To run, they flick them. Have a look at Justin Holbrook. Have a look at Justin Holbrook as a coach.
Yeah.
So that, he's coaching his side that are just outside the top 8, right? He's had multiple injuries, particularly to some of his key players throughout the year. They're just starting to come back. He was looking forward to the next 3 or 4 weeks. He gets called into an office 10 a.m. in the morning and said, "Mate, you're gone." in that moment, effective immediately.
But
just said, "See you
employees
later."
don't tell employers what to do. That's life.
Yeah, that is true. That's true. The boss is the boss. Yeah, give the rule.
Now, it was reported Ben Hunt did ask for a Griffin clause last year in the event Griffin was terminated. The Dragons didn't put it in the contract. He did end up signing the contract anyway. Now he gets to exit potentially the contract without the clause. So, I mean, it's an ass. The whole law's an ass. So what's your advice today, Cameron, for the Dragons? If you're the Dragons, while he mightn't be there next year, do you stand your ground, though, for the rest of the season? That's the big call that has to be made today. Do the Dragons say, no, you can't leave the club this year?
Oh, it's a difficult one. If he leaves, you need to be heavily compensated. Heavily compensated. And it's the Broncos. So we're hearing it's the Broncos. They've come hard. They're chasing him. So, you need cash and you need players. That's what I believe. If you're not compensated, if you're not, and I know that sounds easy. That sounds
no,
pretty easy.
So, instead of Patrick Carrigan, say, well, we'll have Billy Walters.
That's it.
We'll have Billy Walters.
We say the strategy.
Well, that's right. Imagine that.
We'll have Billy Walters.
How does that go down?
That'll be a nice headache for Kevy Walters, wouldn't it?
Or we take captain for captain. We'll have Adam Reynolds. You have Ben Hunt. You'll take our halfback captain.
Yeah.
We'll have Adam Reynolds for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Then you can have him back.
Well, that seems the likely. The idea behind the trade, isn't it, is to take Ben Hunt up to the Broncos to play in that 9 position. He's not going to take Reynolds or Ezra Mam out of those positions.
But
so,
with respect, they can't just throw up. With respect, they can't just throw up Corey Jensen or someone like that as, here you go, Dragons, you can have Corey Jensen. Who's tried his heart out, but, you're taking our captain, our origin star.
It's got to be
a star.
Like for like.
It'd have to be a star.
Like for like, heavily compensated, of course.
Who goes? Do they let a Herbie Farnworth go because he's leaving the club anyway? Does Tom Flegler get offered to them? But if I'm the Dragons, I'm not having them.
Chance.
If I'm only getting them,
no chance.
If I'm only getting them for 7 weeks or whatever, I'm not having them. So
now let's change tack quickly. We're talking about Nelson. Nelson scoring that try on the weekend for the Melbourne Storm. Yeah, just rampaging through the defensive line, big step. And Vossy threw up. How do you handle Big Nelson if he's coming front on? And I said, well, you've got to hit him high. They can't run without heads. That's the only way I could do it. but we've had another suggestion here, and Bakes from Brisbane says, well, you chat on feral pigs. How do you cull the feral pigs? You got to go up in a helicopter. And he said that's the only way you'd handle Nelson.
The drone attack. The
drone attack. Yeah, come from high.
Right. Drone attack on Nelson.
Well, it would be a nightmare, wouldn't it? Nelson coming towards you, and he put that big right foot step.
Wow.
Which I guess the fullback who was it fullback?
Ruben Garrick.
Ruben Garrick was happy to see the footwork from Nelson.
He saw his life flash before his eyes. I mean, seriously, you might even find in Bunnings something that you could get to stop. Your best pickaxe. Your best pickaxe mightn't work on Nelson at full flight coming at you.
Piece of 4B too.
Yeah, but not even that, wouldn't
across
it?
the knees.
Yeah, across the knees. Oh, that's a good point.
We'll get Cameron's opinion on Warney too. Boys, I can only describe the Warney show as an Amber Heard of the highest order. Western Sydney Eagle.
Yeah,
Cam, did you catch any of Warney last night?
No, I missed that. No. I missed that show. No.
And you didn't record it to catch up with it tonight, or
no.
Well, you know how it ends.
I might be able to get it on 9 now, maybe.
I'm just saying, you're doing 18s anyway. The second part's on tonight. More texts. It's a joke. There are teams crying out for a halfback, and he goes and plays hooker for a top 4 team. Come on, says Wade. This one, if the Broncos with Hunt make the grand final, they better hope it doesn't go to Golden Point. Oh, wouldn't that be the... no, he couldn't. Lightning couldn't strike twice. He couldn't drop a kick-off in a grand final, could he? Imagine that. Imagine the juju from Dragons fans. That would say, I'd fair dinkum look into, I would believe in voodoo if that happened. If Ben Hunt went and dropped a kick-off in a grand final for the club he joined, I would believe there is something at play. There's something out there.
This one from the Nugget, he says, isn't what's happening with Ben Hunt bringing the game into disrepute? Isn't this when the NRL should step in, stand him down instead of letting him move to Brisbane? Nugget, no, he's not. He's well within his rights to be doing what he is, because that's the rules at the moment.
Exactly.
In the game, allow it to happen.
Would there be so many people upset if he was going to, say, a bottom 8 side?
That's right. Go to the Tigers. He goes to a team above him. So the Dragons are last today, Cameron. Tigers are
that's
second
right, yeah.
last, so he goes
Yeah.
over the Tigers to play.
Probably
halfback
not Cam.
for the rest
I
of the
don't
season.
reckon. Well, you know, there'd be disappointment from Dragons fans, but
Dragons
there
fans.
wouldn't be. I don't think game wide
Outcry.
outcry. Yeah, that's best way to say. it.
Stopping Nelson. If Nelson is charging at you, this is interesting, Cameron. You grab your nearest teammate and you throw him at him. So you actually pick up someone and throw him.
Push him into the
Yeah,
road.
that's it. Push him into the road.
him into good
Throw him
collision.
under a bus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Literally.
Yeah. So Cameron, back in the day, you pick up a Jerome Hughes, just throw. Well, I'm saying no. Sorry, someone opposite. So if you're if you're Manly the other day,
Yeah.
they pick up Tolu Kola. Just throw him and try and throw
Get
him
in there.
front.
Get in there, mate.
Roping Nelson is the only way. All fullbacks should be given an opportunity to throw a rope around his legs.
Interesting. I like
Bit of cowboy stuff. Bit of roping.
Apparently, with our Queensland listers, Ian Healy said he believes Hemsworth should have been playing Warney. That's a big call. On something that obviously had bugger all budget based on what people have witnessed last night. I don't think they were getting Hemsworth to play in the Warney show. I almost said something else. I almost did a Reece Walsh there. I almost ripped out an expression, something with a word in front of all on the budget. Now, on that, there's a couple of incidents out of the weekend before we take a break that the judiciary, that we don't know what's going to happen with Reece Walsh, but Micah Sevo on Saturday, Cameron, raised forearm. I've described it as the highest forearm lift I've seen by an attacker since the 1970s. Maybe Great Britain versus Australia. I mean, as Brandy said earlier, almost missed his head. He cocked the elbow up so high to collect a Sarko. He's been charged but only fined. How can you have a headbutt nudge, get weeks and sin bin on the spot, and that forearm goes on report and not even a penalty and a fine later? How does that work?
We're so the bunker and the officiating at the moment around foul play is so inconsistent at the moment. It's not funny. It really is. It's so up and down, and it's not week to week, Vossy. It's game to game.
True.
But see, the raising of the forearm,
It's so
it can do and I Tino didn't face any charges after Appy Coruscant because he didn't really lift the elbow into it. But that's what a forearm can do. A forearm can break a jaw, break a nose, smash a mouth.
Yeah.
It can do damage, and we're allowing it to happen. Now, 2 weeks before that, Cam, the one on Reed Marnie.
But that's big man on little man.
Tino should have got in trouble for the Reed Marnie shot because it was a raised forearm into the head of a player.
He got fined for that one, didn't he?
He did get
Reed
fined.
Marnie one.
Yep.
Yeah, which I thought was worse than the Coruscant. So
Absolutely.
the reason why he got away with the Coruscant one was because it was his ball carrying arm, right?
Yep.
And he actually didn't lift it or lead with it. The ball was on his body.
Good point.
It was
actually
unfortunate,
allowed to.
yes.
Yeah, it was an unfortunate incident, that one.
Yep.
I agree with the Reed Marnie one. So when it's the non-carrying, non-ball carrying arm. When you lead with that, and particularly when you turn it horizontal, and you hit a defender with the forearm or the elbow, that's the dangerous one. So that's when there's a high probability of breaking a jaw, hitting someone in the face, like eye sockets, all this sort of type of facial stuff. They're the dangerous ones. We need to get those out.
Report, no penalty and no sin bin at the time and a fine later.
It's crazy.
You're right, Cameron, about it's not week to week, it's game to game that you scratch your head about how we're dealing with foul play. 23 after 8, Cameron Smith is with us. If you've got a question, fire it in on the text, 0457 736 736. Breakfast with Vossy and Brandy and the GOAT right across the SEN network.